If you've only ever seen Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, and then stumble into Ralph Bakshi's 1978 version, it feels like you've accidentally found the bootleg VHS they warned you about at the video store. Except, plot twist, it isn't a bootleg. This was the official attempt. The pioneer. The one that said, sure, let's cram the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers into one movie, animate over live actors, and slap on enough solarized footage to make Middle-earth look like it's been broadcast from Saturn. Bakshi wielded rotoscoping like it was the One Ring itself. Dangerous, powerful, and occasionally leave you wondering if the projector is broken or if this is the movie. It's the film that didn't bother to finish the story, but still managed to start a decades-long argument about whether it's a cult classic or the cinematic equivalent of showing up to the marathon and quitting at mile 17. Love it or hate it, it left an indelible mark on fantasy filmmaking. Kind of like stepping on a Lego barefoot. You might not enjoy it, but you will remember it. Bakshi's The Lord of the Rings tackles the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers, then screeches to a halt somewhere around the Helm's Deep Shelob checkpoint, because this was meant to be part one of a two-part epic. Unfortunately, United Artists decided to market it like it was the entire saga, slapping The Lord of the Rings on the poster as if The Return of the King was just going to show up in the credits. Cue audience confusion, Tolkien purists frothing into their pipeweed, and critics clutching their pearls so tightly they risk cutting off circulation. And yet, the thing still made money. About $30.5 million in North America, off a budget reported anywhere between $4 million and $12 million, meaning either Bakshi pulled off the fantasy equivalent of a scrappy indie blockbuster, or someone's accounting department was doing math with a blindfold on. By 1978 standards, that was enough to call it a hit. Though for audiences expecting a satisfying ending, it was like paying for a 7-course meal and getting up from the table after the soup. The road to Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings was about as short as the Council of Elrond's to-do list. Bakshi, already the enfant terrible of adult animation, chased the rights to Tolkien for years until producer Sol Zantz and United Artists finally bit. From there, he cooked up a production pipeline that mixed traditional cel animation with live action reference, then went all in on a technique called rotoscoping, tracing over live action footage frame by frame. Why? Cost control, realism, and because animating thousands of orcs the Disney way would have taken roughly 4 centuries and a personal thumbs up from Walt's Frozen Head. They shot huge chunks of it as live action, famously in Spain, before transforming it into something halfway between a painting and a bad trip. Battle scenes leaned on solarized footage to give a ghostly war memory haze, while other parts went full rotoscope. Bakshi would later admit it worked, and didn't. Some shots had this stunning, weighty movement you just don't get in traditional animation. Others looked like they'd been finished by someone who just found out their rent was due. The Spanish lab, in its own moment of artistic critique, nearly destroyed some footage after spotting modern day phones and cars in frame, because nothing says Middle-earth like a Renault parked next to Helm's Deep. Speaking of Helm's Deep, behind the scenes records point to Belmont Castle in Castilla-La Mancha as the shooting location, a choice that was both budget friendly and metal as hell. Bakshi described the rotoscoping process with scenes involving hundreds of moving figures, each cell so intricate an artist might finish one in a week. He called it rotoscope realism. The old guard of animation called it heresy, and rolled their eyes so hard they saw their own brains. Then came editing, a mad scramble from a 150-minute rough cut down to a release length with only weeks to spare. Bakshi wanted more time, didn't get it, and the ending was massaged just enough to avoid a truly brutal cliffhanger. You can still feel the scissors in the final cut, like the movie occasionally forgot what scene it was in and just left. Before tackling Tolkien, Ralph Bakshi had already turned American animation's neat little picket fence into splinters. He burst onto the scene with Fritz the Cat, the first X-rated animated feature, which became a box office hit and proved cartoons didn't have to be about talking mice in gloves. They could be about cats doing things that would get you banned from Disneyland. Then came Heavy Traffic, a gritty, surreal, deeply personal urban story that made Disney executives clutch their pearls and faint onto their piles of merchandising money. By the time he made Wizards, his pre-Lord of the Rings fantasy warm-up, Bakshi was already mixing psychedelic visuals, post-apocalyptic landscapes, and an anti-war sermon, all narrated like a bedtime story read by someone who'd just taken a very strange bus ride. Bakshi didn't climb into animation through some prestigious art school pipeline either. He came up through Terry Toons, hustling his way through the ranks, doing the work nobody else wanted, and developing the kind of stubborn creative streak that makes studio executives break out in hives. After Lord of the Rings, he didn't slow down. American Pop took his beloved rotoscoping technique and applied it to a sprawling story about music, family, and several decades worth of bad life choices. Then came Fire and Ice, a collaboration with fantasy art legend Frank Frazetta, which basically looked like a Conan the Barbarian mural airbrushed on the side of a van, except the van could move and hit people with the sword. Later came Cool World, the troubled live-action animation hybrid that should have been edgy and dangerous, but got studio noted into a kind of chaotic fever shuffle. And then there was Mighty Mouse: The New Adventures, which managed to sneak subversive humour into Saturday morning cartoons like a smuggler getting contraband past customs. Even if you don't click with his style, you can't miss the through line. Bakshi was always pushing boundaries, trying things no one else in animation would even think of, and willing to make a glorious mess if that's what the art demanded. And he's never been shy about talking either. On the 1978 Lord of the Rings, he's been wonderfully blunt, praising Peter Jackson's trilogy for its technical brilliance, while still making sure people remember he had to clear the path with nothing but grit, stubbornness, and a much smaller machete. If Jackson got to march through the gates with a CGI army, Bakshi was the guy out front hacking through the weeds, swatting orcs with a stick, and yelling, "Don't worry, I've got this." The cast was an impressive lineup of very British talent, plus a certain Golden Protocol droid moonlighting as an elf. Many of them were BBC drama regulars, and some even served double duty as live-action models for the rotoscope footage, meaning they had to stand in Spanish fields wearing cloaks while pretending to fight orcs, only to go back to London and record the dialogue for the exact same scene. Commitment, thy name is theatre. Our ring bearer was voiced by Christopher Guard, a young London actor already well known for period dramas like I, Claudius. He had that perfect blend of wide-eyed sincerity and "please don't make me do this" energy, ideal for a hobbit who's just been told his jewellery might destroy the world. William Squire brought the full weight of a seasoned Shakespearean actor to Gandalf, making him sound like a wizard who could quote Milton, deliver a lecture on elvish poetry, and then scold you for tracking mud into Rivendell. Stern, yes, but always with a faint twinkle, as if he knew you were about to do something foolish and was always composing the "I told you so." Not much is recorded about Michael Skulls beyond a handful of TV credits, but he nailed Sam's loyal gardener accidentally dragged into the Death March vibe. You believe this is a hobbit who packs extra food, worries about you catching a cold, and could still clobber an orc if you threatened his best friend. Yes, that John Hurt, the man who would later have an alien burst from his chest, once strode through Middle-earth as Aragorn. His performance is all weary competence, the sound of someone who's been camping in the wilderness for years and is frankly done with everyone's drama, but will save you anyway. Veteran character actor Norman Bird gives Bilbo a gentle, almost avuncular warmth. He sounds like the sort of man who'd give you a long rambling story over tea and only halfway through you'd realise he's talking about stealing from dragons. Peter Woodthorpe, a stage and screen regular, delivers a Gollum that's all coiled menace and pitiful desperation. He doesn't need motion capture dots, just his voice, to make you feel both sorry for him and deeply uneasy about what he might do next. And then there's Anthony Daniels. Yes, C-3PO himself, trading in the gold plating for blonde hair and a bow. His Legolas has perfect diction, the sort of delivery that makes you think he could recite an epic poem while firing 3 arrows into your hat. Together they cover the full spectrum from stage-solid gravitas to haunted late-night radio drama. And in a film where the visuals sometimes look like a medieval fever hallucination, the voices kept the world grounded. Well, as grounded as you can when your elf used to be a robot. Was Bakshi's magic trick, and his lightning rod for criticism. By tracing over live-action footage, he could give the animation realistic motion. Horses looked like actual horses. Cloaks swirled natural, and the massive battles were possible without animating every soldier from scratch. But the technique was polarizing. Some scenes integrate beautifully with the painted backgrounds. Others feel like mismatched footage. Purists called it cheating, and even Bakshi later said he wished he'd used the live footage more as a guide than a literal tracing. Still, without rotoscoping, this film simply couldn't have been made on the budget or schedule it had. What do you think of rotoscoping? Is it a brilliant shortcut, or animation cheating? Leave a comment below and let me know. Bakshi's The Lord of the Rings hit US theatres on November 15th, 1978, and moseyed into the UK the following year. Financially, it was a hit, pulling in enough box office to make accountants nod approvingly, but critically, that's where things got as split as the Fellowship after Moria. Some critics praised it as daring, ambitious, and unlike anything else on the market. Others saw it as muddled, confusing, and about as coherent as a hobbit explaining quantum physics after second lunch. Fans weren't any calmer. Many walked in expecting to see the entire Lord of the Rings saga, only to discover they were watching half a story. United Artists Marketing had sold this thing like it was their whole enchilada, but halfway through, audiences realized their play only had rice and beans. The sequel that was supposed to finish the tale never happened, and so Bakshi's epic was left dangling, like Sam and Frodo halfway up Mount Doom, except no one ever came back to finish the climb. If you had to pick, would you rather have Bakshi's Part 2 or a completely new animated remake? Let me know in the comments below. Flawed or not, Bakshi's Lord of the Rings carved itself into cinematic history. Peter Jackson has openly admitted that it influenced him, not so much in artistic style — Jackson didn't suddenly go out and buy a rotoscope — but in sheer ambition. Certain moments like the looming shadow-drenched Black Riders feel like direct genetic ancestors to the live-action trilogy. And beyond Jackson, the film's existence proved there was a market for big, serious, live-action in spirit fantasy. Before this, studios thought epic meant Disney princess sings to woodland creatures. The movie cracked open the door for large-scale fantasy filmmaking, even if it didn't actually step all the way through, choosing instead to lean in the doorway and mutter about its budget. Today it survives as a bona fide cult classic. Some admire its rich atmosphere and audacity, others treasure it for the sheer nerve it took to even attempt it, and Tolkien completists file it under mandatory homework. Whether you see it as a bold swing or an unfinished experiment, it's impossible to done. Bakshi swung for the fences with a bat made of pure, chaotic conviction.